Book of the Dead becoming God in ancient Egypt. Birth of the Book of the Dead. The significance of the Book of the Dead vignettes. The use of vignettes for dating and provenance of manuscripts. Part 1. Beside other convincing arguments for narrowing down dating, the vignettes can often deliver additional criteria, especially the most prestigious ones with human representations. Thus, provided that the deceased wanted to be depicted as a vigorous young man in top form, clad in the latest fashion, dates can be ascertained by applying studies on the evolution of style in well-dated 18th dynasty tombs to the Book of the Dead manuscripts, as fashionable garments, wigs, and other complementary elements, short-lived stylistic features. Established dating criteria are well suited for studying them in the 19th and 20th dynasties. The wigs, both of men and women, became heavier and more voluptuous with broad hair ribbons. Pleated kilts and dresses appeared more elaborate as permanently worn at banquets. However, in some illustrations the women seem to be naked, only appearing to wear clothing. There is also a noticeable tendency in the manuscripts to overemphasize the vignettes in number and in sumptuous colors in comparison to a negligence of their texts. In the Amarna period, the Book of the Dead tradition came to a temporary halt and production was totally disrupted. However, immediately afterward, it appeared revived with innovative pictorial compositions as recorded in the complex, but systematic vignette of Book of the Dead, which remained a central vignette until the end of the Book of the Dead tradition. After the Amarna period, some vignettes emerged that had only previously existed in a rudimentary form. For example, the vignette of the sunrise developed from a simple, closing vignette to a full-size composite consisting of the adoration of the sun, godry in the form of a divine falcon combined with newly composed hymns. In the Sate period, this central illustration further developed into a standardized version. Other hymns, such as the hymn to Osiris BD 183, or the hymn to Hathor BD 186, entered into the BD repertoire from the 19th dynasty onward. The Third Intermediate period was a time of newly arising principles in Egyptian funerary religion, which showed their impact on contemporary BD manuscripts. The iconography, full of mysterious motifs of the netherworld and magical figures, mirrored the creative and rich, religious imagery of their time. To a great extent, the iconography of mythological compositions entered into the traditional BD repertoire. While the contents of text and their sequences varied considerably from one manuscript to the other between the New Kingdom and the 25th dynasty, at the end of the 25th dynasty the Book of the Dead underwent a comprehensive revision, the so-called Sate recension, which reduced the confusing diversity by reorganizing and codifying the range, selection, and sequence of spells, including their vignettes. The prototype of this Sate recension became a manuscript of Turin, whose editor established the system of consecutive numbering beginning with BD 1-2. BD 165, still in use today. In the 4th century BC, the BD corpus occurs on a new medium, the long strips of linen used for mummy bandages. Considerable modification to the arrangement of vignettes occurred, especially for large illustrations, because the craftsman had to meet the restricted height requirements of the linen bandages. Their main centers of manufacture were located in northern Egypt. Once the contents of the Book of the Dead were canonized, the vignettes showed very little variation. Due to this, it is all the more difficult to determine the dating or the provenance of a given manuscript. However, a first attempt at defining criteria for dating successive traditions and for potential provenance has proven successful. The layout of the texts and the arrangement of their accompanying vignettes, either placed at the upper border or meandering through the text columns as attractive headings to a spell, were applied differently in the Theban and Memphite traditions. Criteria for studying the stylistic and iconographic changes observed on contemporary funerary objects can be applied to Book of the Dead manuscripts in order to determine their date or region of origin, assuming that the same conditions underlie the evolution of both object groups. In the second half of the Ptolemaic period, 2 new mortuary compositions, the Books of Breathing and the Book of Traversing Eternity, became very popular and gradually replaced the BD compositions. Although they are mainly focused on the importance of breathing, air and a continued existence of the name, traditional BD vignettes often accompanied these compositions. Book